Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast. This is episode number 19 with Stephen App, another great collaborator on the ConnectEDU Podcast Network. So really appreciate him taking some time out shortly before the birth of his recent child. So congratulations to him. But we talk about a lot of cool stuff. I really just love what he's doing over at eCity Interactive. We talk about minimalism and just what he's doing over there with their own podcast, #HigherEd. So go check them out. Links are in the show notes. Just it's really nice to have some quality time here with Stephen. And I know you will enjoy our conversation as well. So after this brief message from our sponsor, this is episode number 19 with Stephen App. It's an honor to have our good friends at SwiftKick be a sponsor of the podcast because I've seen their work firsthand and it's truly unlike any student leadership training I've experienced. They've been voted Best Student Leadership Program unprecedented 5 times, so you know they must be doing something right. As a bonus for our listeners, SwiftKick is giving a $500 discount off their normal speaking fee if you mention Higher Ed Geek when you contact them. I highly recommend their trainings for your campus as your students will be talking about it for months afterwards. It's really great stuff. Check them out, swiftkick.hq.com to learn more and let them know I sent you. Now, back to the show. No, and I'm glad that we could kind of be flexible and figure out scheduling for this. Because I had Josie on a little bit ago, so I'm kind of trying to work through all the collaborators here for the ConnectEDU network. So
nice. How was Josie?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I'd actually I'd interviewed her twice before for my old podcast. So it was like I knew that she, say she has her own podcast, but just like always knowing somebody like kind of being good for it and kind of coming in, like everything just feels easy and they kind of know the game versus. Like I know she was mentioning like, people like getting into cars halfway through episode, like people who just don't know like, oh, I should probably like use headphones or I should be somewhere like not like an echoey conference room or whatever. So yeah, it's always just, nice. Someone who gets in and just had a good conversation, like still talking about some like different stuff that we haven't like talked about before in the previous episodes. So, so that was good. And, just now it's like, you're kind of an all new kind of guest and kind of in a very unique kind of world to explore. So I'm excited to jump in for this one.
Yeah, me too.
But, I guess, we'll just kind of start as we always do. If you just want to give a quick intro of who you are and kind of how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, so my name is Stephen App, and I'm actually a new account director at eCity Interactive. That's a new role for me as of the last couple weeks here. Mm-hmm. And eCity is a digital agency, a content-first digital agency, as we like to call ourselves, focused on higher education marketing, and we're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Very cool. Well, then I guess, kind of your pathway leading to where you are, I guess take us through, specifically maybe if there's any sort of formative times in college or kind of just what led you to this point, because it's a very unique kind of role that, and you have your own podcast that we'll link out to as well. So like maybe specifically how you got into doing that, and obviously if it's maybe sort of content first, that's kind of in your wheelhouse of like producing that. So kind of like what led you either maybe through college to your job, and maybe if you want to just talk more about like the podcast specifically, I guess what maybe seems most salient for you.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like so many people, especially in higher education related roles, always say this, right? Like you totally back into something. And I feel like I totally backed into the job I have now. I was in college and I was doing, play-by-play on the radio for the collegiate sports teams. I was 100% sure once I realized that I was not going to be a professional athlete, that I was going to be on ESPN as a sports journalist. And it unfortunately wasn't until my senior year of college, spring semester senior year of college, and I did an internship at the local NBC affiliate in Boston, and just within a good like 3-4 weeks realized this is not the career that I want to go into, which is I'm glad it happened before I graduated, but I wish certainly it had happened a little bit sooner before I graduated. And so I graduated college and had no was like at square one, just didn't know what to do. And I'd done a lot of media production work in school, and I had a colleague at the university who was like, hey, we actually are going to bring on an entry-level person to help us with our media production. Would you be interested in that role? And so I took it just because I just didn't know what else to do, and I figured it would buy me some time. So I actually got started, career-wise, producing videos and radio segments, and I mean, again, right, content. It's all content. And then was doing that for a number of years until I discovered Twitter. Twitter was this eye-opening experience for me, and especially as a sports fan, because you're scanning this network, and there was this really great example of this pitcher who played for the Colorado Rockies, who one day was just like, does anyone want to play catch? And this fan, of course, was like, yeah, I want to play catch. And 2 hours later, this fan is on the field playing catch with this Major League Baseball player. And I just thought, this is so cool. No other platform does that. That does not happen. Up until that moment, that wasn't a thing. So really got attached into just the power of social networks and how it connected people, just this interconnected platform, and ended up going to grad school based on that interest to just familiarize myself more with communications and marketing, and kind of went from there and really transitioned into this marketing role that I've been doing first at Temple University at their law school for a number of years, and since 2016 here at eCity Interactive.
Very cool. I like how Twitter factors in pretty chiefly into kind of your story and journey there, because I feel it is just one of my favorite platforms, because I feel like, and hopefully they don't, they're already kind of tinkering with it of just they'll kind of interject what you missed and all that. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But just always when they, any social media platform kind of tinkers with the algorithms and if it shows up, chronologically and stuff. But Twitter is so instantaneous. It's so accessible, and, you'll just see what people are talking about right now. And I just always love it for that. And I've also had a lot of great connections, a lot of podcast guests through Twitter. So certainly hats off to Twitter there. But yeah, I guess just again, just because I'm really curious and get meta of talking about podcasting on a podcast. So how, I guess, specifically did you get into doing that? Was that something that you came up with, or was that kind of a collaborative project? And you've been doing that for a little while now, and I guess what's that experience been like in terms of just kind of your current work?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I was listening to podcasts and enjoying podcasts, and just when I was scanning the higher ed landscape for podcasts, I just didn't feel like at the time there was a lot out there. There was, I think it was Chris Alexander at NYU had a podcast that I think he has stopped doing since, but he was out there kind of interviewing individuals who were into social media with higher ed, and he was almost kind of it at the time, and I just felt like there was a gap in the marketplace. And as an agency, of course, we're always looking to produce original content that can attract an audience and get people to know our name a little bit. And I had the radio background from college, so getting in front of a mic or sitting behind a mic certainly didn't intimidate me in any way. And so we just decided to go for it, which has its pros and cons. I'm actually in the next couple of days going to be releasing this very therapeutic article on things that we learned from season 1 of our podcast and what we're adjusting in season 2. But, I do think there was merit in just going for it and learning as we went. And honestly, it's been a ton of work. I'm sure you know this, Dustin. You have your own podcast. It is so much more work than I think people realize. I think it's really easy for people to see a podcast and just say, oh yeah, that's just a collection of, somewhat consistent 30 to 60 minute conversations that someone then just spits out onto a podcasting platform. But there's so much more that goes into it. And I tried to be really realistic about that, but I think I still underestimated the work that goes into it. But it's a real labor of love for me.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of behind the scenes, just like with any, form of content that people
may not realize, pre-production, production, post-production, the marketing for it, and like editing and, all those sorts of things. There's a lot of details. And and if you want to do it well, and if you want to, be consistent with it, like it takes a fair bit of work, but I think, it's definitely worth it. I know that it's just, I think, continuing to grow and evolve as kind of a medium. So it's just cool to see. And I'm a fan of the medium anyway, but,
and I'm so curious to see where it goes within higher education, because I think like if you work at a higher ed institution, like a podcast is such an amazing opportunity, and you could go in a bunch of different ways. Like I've heard some really great podcasts that are targeted to prospective students, which of course is, it's everyone's number one target audience for the most part, because for the vast majority of institutions, that is always a challenge, is getting the best and biggest class you can. But I think there's a real opportunity within alumni and building up alumni relationships and increasing donations and improving your donor relations. Like, I just think there's so much opportunity out there for higher education, because when you go to a school, you have such a higher level of affinity for that brand than you do, a B2B company or even a retail company. Like no one is going to put that they were a lifelong, proponent of Nike shoes in their obituary when they die, but you'll see where they went to college. Like a lot, they graduated X in whatever year. And I just think like that audience has such untapped potential for marketers in higher education. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, no, because I think, any sort of content creation, podcasting, maybe more so in particular, like it's just a great storytelling platform. And I feel like kind of at the core of what you're saying, like there's so much affinity, and I think people are curious about the stories of the students who are there, the faculty who are, working, the faculty and staff who are working there every day, and the alumni who are doing amazing things with their degrees and stuff. Like, those all might be different niche audiences from one institution, but, those are all great stories to be told that I think these people who have an affinity for that institution would, be interested in hearing. And it could definitely serve a lot of different purposes, and just is a great kind of intimate platform and medium to, tell good stories. So, that's definitely part of why I love it. And, it sounds like, that's something that has been just kind of a really cool thing to engage with in terms of your current work. And I guess anything else just in terms of like what you enjoy most about kind of like your current work and job that keeps you, motivated to keep at it every day?
Yeah, I mean, so there are two things for me, and one, to kind of wrap up the podcast segment of this, is, podcasting to me is the one medium out there where you are basically getting paid to have an amazing conversation and expand your network and build relationships. I think that's so cool. Like, you can reach out to someone and authentically build your relationship with that person by just understanding what they're working on, what they've learned from that, what the lessons are for others who may be going through something similar. And then at the end of this really great conversation, like, you actually get to produce that and publish it, and other people can enjoy it too. And it also promotes your organization. I just think like I don't know if there are many other marketing channels where that's such a natural fit. And so I really enjoy that. But the other thing for me, and going from, in-house, right, going from a university to coming to an agency, I think one of the things that I enjoy so much is just my horizons have been expanded to such a level that it has really benefited my career, just personally and professionally. Like, when you work in-house, I often think, like, if you want to try something and your supervisors tell you no, either to limited resources, financial or personnel limitations or whatnot, like, that decision is made, and a lot of times it's made pretty permanently. But at an agency, we get to work on those things, because one higher ed institution may say, we aren't into content marketing. We just don't believe in it, or it's not something we're working on right now. But another institution does. And so we get to work on content marketing with really great partners. And then, someone else might say we're not sophisticated enough to run our run a Facebook campaign, but other other companies are into it. Other institutions are into it. So you just get to work on so many different projects for so many different audiences with so many different brands and voices and tones. And I just think like when you get to do that, you just by nature become a better marketer. And I've really enjoyed that about being in this environment. I didn't get that in-house.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I always kind of appreciate getting that sort of insight a little bit more wider versus just like one institution. Cause I know I kind of always get a little like stir crazy or restless and stuff in terms of just like, okay, I think I've like figured this out. Like what's next, like what's the next thing. So it's neat to just to be in a role that helps to temper that a little bit, I guess, just to have a little bit more of like a view of the landscape and stuff. So, yeah, that's really cool. I guess then, yeah, just to kind of transition here, you mentioned sports before, so if you want to get into that a little bit more, but like what are the things that, you've been geeking out about currently, stuff maybe that, I don't know if it's that you've discovered more recently, if you've always been into it, but just, yeah, anything you want to mention, I guess, of what kind of personally that you geek out about and get really, really enthusiastic about.
It's so funny. Like, so yeah, I mean, I'm into sports. I've grown up as a sports fan, and I guess sports are tied into this other thing. One of the things personally that I've really been trying to focus on and just be aware of is just simplifying my life. And this is probably a precursor to like a midlife crisis that's coming down the pike. But, just really, I don't know, for some reason, I don't feel like I have a ton of free time these days. And so like a recent focus or obsession of mine has really been about just simplifying. Like, do I really need to watch the sporting event that, let's be honest, like I don't have a horse in the race. So am I really going to enjoy it? Or like, should I do something that is going to be more personally rewarding? I've actually totally, separate from sports, but like I've essentially given up Facebook this year. I've stopped looking at Instagram for the most part since their algorithm took effect, and really just like Twitter is what I enjoy. So I just spend my time on Twitter, and I don't mess around with platforms that I don't enjoy, at least from a personal nature. Professionally in my line of work, that's not a reality, but that's been something I've really been focused on lately. Like I want to focus on the things that I enjoy most, and then I just want to acknowledge that everything else is noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, no, I think that's like a thing I realized, like, because I'm a huge like TV fan, but there's like very much a sunken cost theory, of like, well, I've watched this show for 5 seasons, I have to just like watch it forever. But if it's like not bringing me joy anymore, it's just like, well, I'll like just not watch it. I'll either like that makes room for something else that I do enjoy, or yeah, just frees up time. And I think. Yeah, I remember when Vine was a thing. Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace, Vine.
I wasted a lot of time on that. Like, I don't know why. I just loved that platform, but I did have to like delete the app off my phone because it would just be such a huge time sucker. Like having like games on my phone would be the same thing, and it's like good to have that level of self-awareness to like realize it's like this. I guess I'm theoretically enjoying myself, but yeah, sometimes you're kind of mindlessly just like scrolling or just kind of like, filling empty time that you could better utilize for something else that you do want to make room in your life for. Whether that is sometimes just like I just don't want to have to be like feeling like I need to do something all the time, because it's like sometimes I'll just drive in the car without the radio on, nothing on, like just kind of quiet and just sort of like, yeah, have that sort of space to, like I've heard people say, like almost give yourself space to be bored. Your brain then will kind of start to like connect dots or what have you. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, and there's definitely like a movement sometimes more with like the physical things of like minimalism, but that concept also applies to the digital realm of like kind of minimalism in terms of like the things that we just kind of sink a lot of time into. And I know there's a lot too, and just in terms of like privilege in the sense of like having enough time in terms of like running errands and those sort of things. If it is like, it's like, man, I'm spending a lot of time like playing games on my phone or going through Facebook. It's like, and I feel like I'm always behind with like running errands or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, it's like, cause I mean, I'm guilty of this. It's like, yeah, I mean, you wake up and then you spend like 30, 45 minutes like scrolling through your phone just to like look at stuff. And it's like, that's why you're always like, oh no, I got to rush to work. Cause it's like, maybe don't touch your phone until you like, kind of get everything done in your routine, and then you're like, okay, I don't have to feel like I'm rushed. But it's interesting, yeah, almost like geeking out about that and being like, okay, where can I make more room in my life? What are things that aren't kind of bringing me joy anymore, and kind of helping to streamline.
Yeah, it's totally like I've gotten to this point now where when I say yes to something, when I say like, okay, I care about this and I want to do this, like I've been really trying to focus on like, well, what does that mean I have to say no to? Or what does that mean I should say no to? And because I think you're right. Like if you're just browsing on Facebook, killing time, which I've done certainly so many times, but it's like, well, if you're doing that, like what are you losing? What are you missing out on? And I think it's Facebook especially, it's so easy to not think of that because it just sucks you in with that newsfeed and the endless scrolling. And, they know what you want to see, so they're going to keep giving it to you. But, yeah, like just trying to be so much more aware of like, what am I not doing right now because I'm doing this activity, and am I cool with that?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, it's going to be different for each person. Like for me, it's like I knew that I could not keep games on my phone and be productive with other things that I wanted to do. Some people might be able to kind of, organize things in a better way to not be that way. But yeah, if it's just like, I really don't want to have Facebook on my phone, but I'll probably check it every once in a while. Or yeah, I need to like deactivate it altogether, and I'll like reactivate it only when I want or need to, or whatever. People will kind of figure out how that sort of fits right and kind of makes sense for them. But yeah, if people are podcast listeners and want more kind of in this thing, it just made me think there is like literally just like it's two guys that are called The Minimalists. They have a podcast and a blog and a site and stuff. So I'll link out to that if you're interested in exploring this more. But yeah, and I guess
how is their podcast? I've watched their documentary, but I didn't even realize they had a podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty good. They do a lot of just like Q&A, like, and I think they kind of theme it around like they'll kind of curate a bunch of questions around a certain theme, and they have some like live events that they'll record. So I've kind of like picked random episodes from their library to listen to if it's like, yeah, I'm really interested in that. Sometimes it like, I think sometimes I'll put this caveat to all the minimalist stuff because it is kind of like a trendy little sort of lifestyle kind of thing right now, is that sometimes the people who are minimalists or advocate for that very much come from like a very privileged background to where it's like,
oh, totally,
yeah, it's like, man, I've had this like like 6-figure job for like 5 years, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna like get rid of everything or whatever and just like quit my job and just like do it. And it's like, okay, the way that you're framing this, I really don't think everybody could be able to do that, but there are some nuggets of wisdom in there of just in terms of like and like the what's her name, but it's like the life-changing magic of tidying up. Like that one is that kind of simple formula of just like look at things in your life and see if they bring you joy. That can kind of just be a formula that kind of simplifies it to donate old stuff that you just have sitting in a closet kind of thing. It feels like it makes the most sense for that. But.
Doesn't it always seem that way? You're right. It's like I was a hedge fund manager making $300,000 a year, and I just decided like these 20 pairs of jeans didn't bring me happiness, and I just always like, yeah, nobody can relate to that.
Right. Yeah. I got rid of my car, got rid of my house, got rid of like all these things. It's like, I mean, I need all that to live and to get to my job. It's sometimes kind of weird. Yeah. They'll always just put this like disclaimer at the beginning of, made all this money. Now it's just like, I don't know. Maybe I just want to like, wear the same pair of jeans and shirt like all the time and just keep it simple, whatever. But yeah, I think if you can kind of acknowledge that and accept it and kind of push past it, they'll talk about valuable things just in terms of like strategies to, both physically and kind of digitally minimalize our lives. So, yeah, it's good stuff. I'll link out to it if folks want to check it out. But, I guess, yeah, I'm curious if maybe specifically with, maybe it's sports, maybe it's with kind of the, streamlining your life kind of stuff, like anything kind of like anecdotally, like how these sort of interests of yours have positively contributed to your life over time, like anything that you can think of with anything that you kind of geek out about.
I just always feel like the more, and it's funny when you say like geek out or be interested, I always feel like my personality doesn't work that way. Like I have a really hard time just like devoting myself to any one topic for too long of a time. I just like, once I get past a certain point, my brain immediately is like, okay, if I understand this or I'm into this, but if I go further down the rabbit hole, like what am I not learning? What else am I missing out on? I guess it goes back to this whole simplifying the life thing, but like, I just try to, like, I want from a hobby perspective to just be into different things, or interest wise be into different things. Cause I just think it makes you more well-rounded. Like when you go to events, or you're meeting people, or you're interacting with clients or colleagues or whatever it is, I just think the more you can have a tangential understanding of something, just the more interesting conversations you can have with people. Like, I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just like, can you have an interesting conversation with an individual about something that is not, why you're meeting them. So if you're meeting them at a marketing conference, like, can you talk to someone about something that's really interesting that has nothing to do with marketing? I think that's where hobbies and interests just play such a role in your life. Like, it just makes you more interesting.
Right. Well, I guess, yeah, and I can get that way of kind of how you're framing it, of like, I'm just being like a sampler, like never really being like, well, this is the only thing I'm into, and I have no knowledge of anything else. If somebody were to like talk to me about something, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Or the only thing I talk about, I get like way too deep on, and people are like, you lost me, or whatever. So yeah, I think, yeah, there's definitely a lot of value in kind of being a sampler, and being someone who can appreciate things that maybe you're not into or don't do, but like, yeah, you might have kind of like an understanding of, or an appreciation of it. Because yeah, like I've never been a huge sports guy, but like I'll know certain things, because like if something is big enough, it'll even like boil up into my feeds where I don't really follow anything into sports, but it's just like a big enough story, and then maybe I'll read it and I'll kind of like know kind of like contextually what's happening right now, and any sort of like major sport or something. But yeah, also not like being like, if somebody starts talking to me about sports and just being like, I don't know anything about sports, I can't talk to you. I don't want to be like, because yeah, I know it's almost like I want, if somebody is geeking out about something, or talking about something I don't know about, it's like, yeah, like tell me more. I'm curious. Like, let's get into that, because I don't know, but I appreciate that you're into it, and I'd like to know more. So yeah, I think that's just valuable things. I think yeah, like you said, it like a easy example. Yeah, you're at like a networking event, and you might be talking to somebody about who knows what. You've got to be able to kind of go back and forth with them, and not have it, kind of be awkward and fall apart quickly. But I'm
only going to refer to myself as a sampler now. Like, I love that way to describe it. So
yeah.
From now on, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm a sampler.
yeah, there you go. Well, I guess, in that vein, is there anything specifically right now that you're reading, watching, listening to, anything specific that you'd want to kind of share out as like a resource, or just something you're enjoying that we can include in the show notes?
Oh, yes. This is the best part. Okay, so there's a couple interesting things, and like, I've been watching a lot of the Olympics lately, and I had strep throat last week, so I really watched a lot of the Olympics, probably too much. But I just read 2 books that were super interesting to me for widely different reasons. One was very much like your nonfiction marketing book. It was called Killing Marketing, and it was by the guys who started Content Marketing Institute. And I just thought it was really interesting, because it was about basically transforming marketing from what is a cost center for so many organizations, right? You spend money to market your company, and in most cases you don't break even. Like, your business may do better, but like on each individual level of your marketing, you're likely to have a negative or neutral ROI. And their whole thing was about like taking that out, and instead like becoming a publisher and generating revenue from that publishing. But then in that publishing, like, you are still marketing your company. And I just thought that was so interesting. Like, I mean, it can be ad revenue, or it can be like if you're hosting events, like people are going to pay to go to your events, and like that's an interesting educational experience. You're going to give your audience value, but you're also going to make money from those events. I just thought it was a really cool and refreshing look at an industry that I've been involved in for a number of years. But the other one that I thought was really interesting, so we are a HubSpot partner agency at eCity, and I discovered this book thanks to a colleague of mine called Disrupted by Dan Lyons, who was a writer. I think it was for Newsweek at the time, and he was laid off in the recession and ended up stumbling into this job at HubSpot during their really early years. And I was a fan of HubSpot and still am obviously a fan of HubSpot. But the book is just this really funny description of this guy who's, in his 50s and is used to a certain way of life, like getting into a startup culture and just not understanding the different unique culture that comes with being in a startup. So, if anyone's interested in HubSpot or startups or Silicon Valley, like it's just this really humorous, easy read that I cannot recommend enough from a book perspective.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, I guess, in addition to that, like I said, I'll definitely link out to hashtag Higher Ed podcast that you produce, and just everything else that we talked about in this episode. So yeah, all good stuff there. I feel like I need to bookmark that book. It does sound like a fun one. But I guess to wrap up here, we will end here as we always do. If you just want to kind of mention something or things that you're looking forward to in your job and your life in the world, kind of any or all of those things, just to kind of end everything here on an optimistic note.
Yeah, of course. And I'm really excited because my wife is pregnant and due with our second child. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but pretty much any day now, every time we're in that spot where now every time my phone vibrates, I panic and look at the screen. I'm expecting like a go text where I need to pack up all my stuff and scramble home. So I'm really excited. I've got a 2-year-old daughter. She's a little older than 2, and this will be baby number 2, and just like super excited / anxious / panicked and but just I mean, at the end of the day, super excited to bring another life into this world, and then try not to screw up as a parent too much.
Right. Yeah, just like growing your family, and it is like, because like, I feel like if you were just like kind of like, whatever, it's just like no big deal. It's like, no, like you take it seriously, you want to do well, so it's kind of just like, I'm excited, but I'm kind of nervous and all that, so it's like, as you should be. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, that's great, and hope everything goes well with all that. And I know I wanted to try and catch you before kind of all that got underway, so I'm glad that we could find some time here together to chat here for a bit. And I mean, it's just cool stuff that you're doing. I'm glad I get to work together with you with the podcast network stuff, and just look forward to chatting more and getting to know each other more. And hopefully I'll be able to pop up and see you there in Philly sometime soon.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that we got to do this. This is a lot of fun for me to be on the other side of the microphone.
Yeah, there you go.
It's always really exciting.
This podcast is a proud member of the ConnectEDU Podcast Network, bringing together diverse voices and thoughtful discussions to the higher ed community. Check us out online at connectedu.network or on Twitter at ConnectEDUPod. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast.